Once upon a time, Jack was living with his two brothers, Tom and Will, and their daddy, in a little tiny house on a little tiny farm. And these boys were growing up and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And directly their daddy got to thinking, I need to leave this house and farm to just one of my boys, and the other two are going to have to go off somewhere else to seek their fortune. So he called his three sons to him and he said, boys, here's the deal. Whichever one of you can fill up the house, it'll be yours, and the farm too, and the other two will have to go off somewhere else to seek their fortune. Now, what do you think about that? And they said, well, Daddy, I reckon that's fair. Now, Tom, he had an idea straight off. And so he went right down to the barn where, well, the biggest thing on their farm, a big thing would fill up the house, and the biggest thing was a Matilda, the cow. So down he went to the barn and he sang all the way there. As I was going to the barn upon a summer's day, there I spied the biggest cow ever fed on hay. Fall-all the day, fall-all, diddle-all the day. Now the horns on that cow's head reached up to the moon. I climbed up in January, didn't get back till June. Fall-all the day, fall-all, diddle-all the day. And with every verse Tom sang, that cow got bigger, till she was the biggest cow in the world. And Tom tied a rope around her neck. He led her up to the house. He opened the front door and he pushed that cow inside. She was big. Her head filled up the kitchen, her body filled up the living room, her rear end filled up the bedroom where her tail was just a swishing and knocking things off the dresser. And Tom's daddy said, well, son, that's good, son. But Tom, there's still a little bit of room up in this high corner and a little bit of room down in that low corner. You haven't quite filled up the house. Tom was disappointed. He had to lead Matilda back down to the barn. And then it was Will's turn. Now he was thinking, if one big thing didn't fill up the house, then maybe lots and lots of little things would fill up the house. So he went down to the barn and he sang all the way there. He sang, hey, hey, Jane, Jane, my lordy lord, Jane, Jane, I'm gonna fill, Jane, Jane, the house with hay, Jane, Jane, I'm gonna pile, Jane, Jane, I'm gonna stack, Jane, Jane, and I'm gonna win this house, not Jack, hey, hey. That's what Will used. Big old wheelbarrow piled high with hay. He wheeled it up to the house. He opened the front door and he pitched hay inside. Hay was blowing all through the house and into those high corners and into those low corners, and it was looking good till that hay began to settle. Settled down till it was just knee deep. You haven't filled up the house, said Will's daddy. Oh, Will was disappointed too, and it took him days to sweep all that hay out of the house, giving Jack plenty of time to think. Now, Jack was having a lot of trouble, because you see, he didn't want his brothers to leave, so he didn't want to win the house. He wanted them all to stay on there working together. There was a lot of work to do on the farm, and they all had their specialities, and they had such good times together. And so Jack, he thought, and he thought, and he And one night, he got it. He said, Tom, Will, Daddy, come on in, sit down in the living room, make yourselves comfortable. So they did. And then Jack went to where their granddaddy's fiddle was hanging on a peg on the wall, and Jack took down the fiddle and he played a little tune. What do you think about that, Daddy? And his father says, well, son, I think that's a nice tune. Oh, what about it? Well, haven't I gone and filled up the house? Said Jack. His daddy looked at him. And then he said, well, by golly, you have, Jack. You have filled this house up floor to ceiling with music. So the house is yours and the farm too. And now wait, says Jack. I got the idea from Tom and Will. What? Said Tom. I didn't think about, Will said, I didn't know. Oh, yes, says Jack. When I came in tonight, Tom was just lighting the lantern and filling the house with light. And Will, he'd been baking bread, and the house was filled with such a good smell. And I want us all to go on living here together. And I've been thinking we could just add on at the barn a little apartment there. We could add a little tiny house down at the garden, and there'd be room for all of us. And I'm here to tell you, that's just what they did. And they stayed on living together as happy as could be. Now, they told me to tell you all that you can come visit any time. There's plenty of room for everybody now, and there's good things to eat, and there'll always be a bit of music in the evenings. And if they can all live happily together, why not you and me? Jack fills up the house.